Shabbat Shalom to yet another Shabbat, that we have the opportunity to encounter God and experience Him together as we connect with one another in sacred, though virtual, space and time. And as we do so, we're reminded of the situation we're in, and as a result of that, we've made the following prayer that has been sent to you as part of the invite to join with us. We've made the following prayer a regular part of our service. So if you've got it in front of you, I will ask that you follow along. With the exception of Richard, I'm going to ask you to feel free to join with me. And the reason I'm excluding Richard is in these presentations, inevitably there's a time gap between the various participants. So you out there, but not Richard, join with me in the prayer. Richard, I'm sure you can follow along quietly. May it be your will, O Lord my God and God of my ancestors, that you abide among us. Spread over us the shelter of your peace, Sukat Shalom. As the eagle watches over its nest, so let your presence spread over our heads. Surround us and let the stream of life flow in your servants. O Lord, bestow on us your blessings. And to those who hunger and thirst, give bread and water. You have made us worthy to dwell under the cover of your wings. O Lord, please deal graciously with us. Ba'ukata Adonai. La'olam. Amen. And that, as I remind you from week to week, is God's commitment to us. And because of God's commitment to us, we can have a confidence in Him as we share the phrases become even more familiar among Israelis. Avarnu et paro, na'avor gam etza. We got through Pharaoh, we'll get through this too. We will survive because He is our God. But as part of that survival, there's a responsibility we have, and we're reminded of that responsibility because it's part of the command that we find in the middle of the book of Leviticus, repeated on a couple occasions by Yeshua. You're to love your neighbor as yourself. And as the sages of old in the Talmud remind us, a person who saves one life is as if he or she has saved the whole world. And again, we're reminded of that in yet another way. Every time we say the blessing for putting on the face mask, the blessing, the final line of that blessing concludes and reminds us, Vitzivanu al shmirat hanefesh. You have instructed us to protect life. And speaking of life, just a few things about the life of the synagogue and our congregational community. Some of you were able to join with us last Saturday for what we called Stump the Stars Jewish style, and concluded with Havdalah. If you joined with us, we were happy to have you with us. Last week, we will not have one tomorrow night. We are having Stump the Stars Jewish style every second and fourth Saturday at 7 o'clock. And if you want to send your questions in advance, feel free to reach us at stumpthestars@gmail.com. So if you have, as we mentioned in the invite for tonight and for that event, if there's a question you have that you've always wanted to ask a rabbi, or just suddenly decided you had a question for a rabbi, feel free to join Patrice and me. Not this week, but next week, for our next installment of Stump the Stars. Now let's see what else. Oh yes, please do subscribe to us on YouTube. If we can reach the point of 100 subscribers, it will be much more. We will be much more easily found on YouTube, and the links will be much simpler. Also, remember to share us with others in your own larger community, and like us as well while you're at it. Then I want to share with you something, and that is that we paid our flood insurance. And so we thank God and we thank you for your part in making that possible for yet another summer, as once again, the flood insurance cost increased dramatically. And speaking of insurance, we have our summer insurance payment, which is the large part of the payment. That's due next month. So we ask you to continue to connect with us in one of the ways that's mentioned in the invite to tonight. Your donations are essential. And they are gratefully accepted and received. One other announcement before I turn it over to Richard, and that is for those of you who are in the historical geography course that Dr. Patrice was teaching before COVID interfered, that will relaunch this Tuesday night. Look for a notification of that as well as a link in your emails, and we'd love for you to hop back on board to that particular course and take advantage of that. Now, as it turns out, in this week's Parsha is a section known as Ma Tovu. And so we're going to begin our Shabbat service with Ma Tovu. And the reminder that is in that Parsha, that portion of the Parsha, is that God is with his people who have acclaimed him as king. And this was something that was readily recognized by the prophet, that's very strange prophet who pronounced those words. And as a result of the reality he perceived and the reality we now get to experience, we find ourselves in the very presence of God. So you'll see it in the insert. If you have a Siddur, it's pages 144 and 145. Join us for Ma Tovu. Richard, if you're ready, go for it.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. V'ani berov chazdecha avo betecha eshtakav el hekol kadeshecha b'yiratecha. V'ani berov chazdecha eshtakav el hekol kadeshecha b'yiratecha. Adonai, ahavti ma'on betecha, u'makom mishkan kevodecha. V'ani eshtachave, ve'echra, evracha lifnei Adonai osi. V'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai, et ratzon. Elohim, rov hazdech, aneni, be'emet yishech. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. O Lord, through your abounding faithful love, I come into your house, and reverently I worship you in your holy sanctuary. I love being in your house, the place where your glory resides. Here I bow down to worship you, my Lord and Maker. Accept my prayer, O Lord, and answer with your great mercy and with your saving truth. Amen. And together, how lovely are your tabernacles, O Lord of hosts. I long, yes, I pine for the courts of the Lord. My heart joyfully sings to the living God. One thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will pursue, that I may live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the graciousness of the Lord and to enter his sanctuary. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in the right path. With you is the fountain of life. In your light do we see light.
As I mentioned before, so I remind you, Ma Tovu reminds us that we are in the presence of the God of the universe. He is among us, and he is the one who's committed himself to us. And Shabbat becomes the sign, or has been the sign for generations, the sign of his covenant commitment with us. And every time we celebrate Shabbat, we remind ourselves, God has said to us, we are his people. He is, in fact, our God. And here's the interesting thing about Veshamru. Veshamru, this is not interesting. Veshamru comes from Exodus 33. That's not the interesting part. But Veshamru, comes from Exodus 31. In Exodus 32, you have the golden calf. And then in Exodus 35, we have our people who went through the golden calf experience. We have them reminded by God and by Moses of Shabbat yet again, because Shabbat remains the sign that God is committed to us and to us as his people. And that is often not because of what we have done, but even despite what we have done. So it's a very powerful reminder. Richard leads us again, pages 8 to 11 if you've got a Siddur, or just the insert if you're working from that.
Vishamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ladorotam berit olam beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti le'olam Ki sheshet yamin nasa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz uvayom hashavi Shabbat vayinafar. The children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever, that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he ceased from work and rested.
And now we're ready to light the Shabbat lights. And as we kindle the Shabbat lights, we have the opportunity to enter into more fully the reality that Shabbat is and is intended to be. As Vicky comes to lead us now, and we come to join her in welcoming the Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahidlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to kindle the lights for the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahiyot olabonim, v'natan lanu Yeshua Meshikenu ha'or la'olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to be a light for the nations, and gave us Yeshua our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Shabbat Shalom. Picking up on the second of the two blessings that Vicky shared with us, we're reminded of the one who is the light of the world, who's also the one who's king on his throne, as the sages of old expected the Messiah to be, and as we understand him to be, as we now respond to him on pages 40 and 41, Ha-Elohim Asher.
האלוהים אשר דיבר מקדם פעמים רבות ובדרכים רבות אל האבות ביד הנביאים דיבר אלינו באחרית הימים האלה ביד הבן אשר שם יורש כל, ובידו גם עשה את העולמים, וזוהר כבודו, ותלם עצמותו, ונושא כל בדברו. רב הגבורה ולחן שעשה טיהור חטאים ישב לימין הגדולה. In the past, God spoke to our fathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, in the end of days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sins, he sat down in the place of authority beside the majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and lasting, right and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
Kaddish in its various forms reminds us of that closing paragraph, that what God has delivered to us is loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, good and beautiful. But sometimes there are times that are not quite so good and beautiful, desired and pleasant, times when we reflect on the loss of loved ones, whether family or friends. And when we reflect on lost family or friends, it is Jewish tradition to stand as we respond with Kaddish and to acknowledge, even in those kind of times, that God remains good and gracious. Just a couple days ago, we lost a longtime member of the synagogue community and family, John Glickman. And so we join with Esther and the rest of the family, and we rise and respond with the words of the Sephardi version of Kaddish, pages 156 and 157. We unite not only with the Glickman family, but with other families that have also lost loved ones as a result of the pandemic that we're all going through together. So please rise and respond. Pages 156 and 157.
Yikirah v'yikadash shamer rabah ve'am divrach yirutei ve'am lich malchutei ve'atzmach porchenei v'karev mashechei v'chayechon u'vyomechon v'chayei rechol beit Yisrael v'adal u'vizman kariv ve'imru Amen. Yehesh me'rabah mavorach le'olam orol me'omaya Yitbarach. Yehesh me'rabah mavorach le'olam orol me'omaya Yitbarach. Yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Yithadar v'yithale v'yithalal Shmei dekudesha berichu La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata Ushpechata v'nechamata Le'amiran ba'alma v'imru Amen Yehi shalom arab min shemaya V'chayim tovim aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Osei shalom bimromah, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom and cause his salvation to sprout and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the life of all the house of Israel, speedily, yes, soon, and say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever, eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven and good life for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen.
He is not only the Holy One, he's the King before whom we stand. And we now pivot towards Jerusalem, east, as we're ready now for the immediate portion that's become the one we focus on in these particular times, because it's a reminder that in all kinds of times, whether in times of sadness or whether in times of pandemic as we're going through, he remains our shield, our rock, through all generations. The immediate portion is paragraph 6, pages 76 to 79. Utilize these words to express your gratitude to our God that he is our rock and our shield through our generation. Utilize these words also to trigger other thoughts of response that these words might bring to your mind. We do this quietly, and then I will conclude out loud. So we thank you for you, O Lord our God, are our ancestors' God for all eternity. You are our rock. You are our shield that saves through every generation, including our own. So we thank you and declare your praise for all your tender care, and we trust our lives into your loving hand. We are always in your keeping. Your wonders and miracles are with us, whether evening, morning, or noon, with us daily. O you who are all good, whose mercies never fail us, compassionate one, whose faithful love never ceases, we ever hope in you. And for all these blessings, we exalt your name, our King, forever and to all generations. And so all the living shall thank you as we do and praise your name faithfully, because you're the God of rescue and liberation. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha ucha lehodot. Blessed are you, O Lord. Your name is good, and to you it is pleasant to give thanks. We said that we are exalting the name of our King. We do even more than that now as we turn to pages 34 to 39 for the Shema. We now affirm wholeheartedly that he is our Lord and our King. And as we do so, we commit ourselves more fully to him. Pages 34 to 39.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kebod Mahuto Leolam Aved. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום בלבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Blessed be he whose glorious kingdom is eternal. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your life and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates.
You may be seated. And now, as you turn to your order of service that came along with the invite to this service, I invite you as well to join with me in the opening lines of the Parsha for this week. Now, it turns out it's a double Parsha, so this is the opening lines of the first part of that Parsha. Read along with me as I try to read as slowly as I can to enable you to read with me. And it begins, Vadaber Adonai El Moshe Ve'el Aharon Lemor. Zot Hukat HaTorah Asher Tzivah Adonai Lemor. Daber El Bnei Yisrael. Vayichu Elecha Para Aduma Temima Asher Ein Ba Mum. Very interesting passage, which means, and the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, this is the requirement of the guidelines which the Lord charged you, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and they will bring to you a often translated red heifer. I'll pause just briefly to say, ever since people have started reading about the red heifer, all kinds of interesting speculations about the red heifer have occurred. Now, let me change that. Since the destruction of the temple, where we know, since the time we no longer do have the ceremony of the red heifer taking place, all kinds of interesting stories have circulated about the meaning and the meaning of the red heifer and the ashes and its ultimate restoration. I only mentioned that there are stories. That's not part of our story tonight. Anyhow, they will bring to you a red heifer, flawless and without having any defect on it. So is the instruction, and the instruction continues then with the use of the ashes of the red heifer in part of the purification rituals, particularly with respect to coming in contact with dead bodies. But that's the first part of the double parsha for this week. The second part is that interesting story of, as many people come to understand the name Balaam, more precisely in Hebrew, that prophet coming out of the east, who was called upon by King Balak, king of Moab, for a very special mission. He wanted Balaam to curse Israel. And the reason for that is because he was concerned about Israel's power and the fact that he would be defeated, he and several others would be defeated by the oncoming Israeli army. Now, the text tells us that he went to Balaam, as he described Balaam, because he can only say, he whom you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed. Now, that should sound familiar because those are the exact words that God promised to Abraham when he entered into that covenant he made with Abraham and later with Isaac and Jacob and with all his descendants. I will bless you, and the one who curses you will be cursed. So right away at the beginning of the story, our thoughts are taken back to God's promises, that God would remain true to those promises. Now, Balaam, by the way, when he is approached, then warns Balak's messengers that he can only say what the Lord puts in his mouth. Now, if Balaam had paid greater attention to his own words, the story might have come out a little differently. So Balaam sends Balak's message on their way, but he does so in a way that enables them to come back to him with yet another offer, a higher price, so to speak, for his services. And this time, Balaam talks to God and says, can I go? And in effect, God says, look, I've already told you so, but it seems like you want to go anyway, so do what you intend to do. And Balaam goes on his way, and then, of course, as he's riding his donkey, 3 times the donkey stops. And it appears that the first 2 times, the donkey realized that Balaam was not getting his message. So the third time he stops and sort of crunches Balaam's foot against the wall. And this time, Balaam still doesn't get the message, but he speaks out harshly to his donkey. By now, the donkey's had enough, and so the donkey talks back to him. God opened his mouth. You see, the donkey realized something that Balaam did not realize and should have realized from the outset, and that is that God was not in this. And so the angel of the Lord stood in his way. He is then given permission to go ahead and do what he intended to do. And again, reminded, he can only say what God tells him to say. And what God tells him to say is interesting. There are 4 different blessings. I'm just going to very briefly bounce through them just to highlight a couple things about them. The first of the blessings says the words that Balak does not want to hear. How am I to curse those whom God has not cursed? How am I to denounce those whom God has not denounced? Please let me remind you that this was said about the people who walked with God in the wilderness. He has not denounced them. And then comes a very interesting text. On the top of the rocks, I see them. From the hills, I behold them, and so forth. This becomes connected in the later Midrash with the text from Isaiah and applies in that Midrashic way to Abraham as the rock whom God sought. And that, by the way, becomes the foundation and framework for Yeshua's response to Shimon or to Peter when he addresses Peter as the one who is nicknamed Rock. But that's a whole other story, again, not for tonight. The end of that first blessing says this: may I die as the righteous die, may my end be like theirs. He is referring to Israel in the wilderness as the righteous, and he wants his end to be like theirs. We need to remember that when we think about the wilderness walk that the people took with God. A people whom God has not cursed, but blessed, is what this text tells us. And that is said at the end of the 40 years. The next chapter is the death of Miriam and Aaron, just prior to the conclusion of the 40 years. So after 40 years, God still describes them as blessed. He does not denounce them, and Balaam thinks he wants to die like the righteous, die like Israel. And then comes that second blessing. No one has seen guilt in Jacob or perceived perversity in Israel. Again, let me remind you, that statement is made after the 40 years. That's how God has Balaam describe Israel. He then says, and their God is with them and acclaimed as king among them. That reminds us of the story of God living among his people through the Mishkan, or the tabernacle. Something that Balaam clearly recognized, and it becomes very clear when in the third blessing he says, Ma tohu o aleka. You remember the words from when Richard sang them. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel. Tents, encampments, reminds us of what God had promised Israel, that he would walk among those very tents and encampments, Leviticus 26:11. And then comes that fourth blessing, the one that people are most familiar with, where he says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not soon. Who is the him? He says, a star will arise from Jacob. A scepter will arise from Israel. This, of course, is the first of the very specific predictions about the Messiah to come, who will come from Jacob. A star. Now, by the way, undoubtedly the story of Balaam circulated once Balaam got back to the eastern part of the Middle East. That sounds like almost a redundancy. And his prophecies undoubtedly became part of their history. And this is the reason, in all likelihood, why those other wanderers from the east, the Magi, said that they had seen a star. Why were they even looking for a star? Because of Balaam's prophecy that the star would rise. And of course they saw the star, but that's still another story. The Haftarah portion for this week is interesting. Micah chapter 5, verses 6 through 6:8. And it sort of builds on the blessings from Balaam's mouth that are part of the parsha. And then it concludes with some words that are very important for us. What is it that the Lord requires of you? Micah asks, to do justly. Let me pause briefly, because these are words addressed to very directly to us as well. Justly, the term there has within it the strong central component of compassion. Do justly. To love mercy. That also describes how we interact with other people. And then to walk humbly with our God, following his guidelines. Interesting that the Haftarah concludes in a sense, describing in yet another way Israel's walk with God through the wilderness. Oh, and by the way, please remember that just a couple verses before this Haftarah text begins, comes that text that says, but you, Bethlehem, or Bethlehem, so small among the clans of Judah, yet from you will come forth to me the future ruler of Israel. By the way, because of this particular prediction, as Lechadodi reminds us, Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite, comes quickly. It's a direct connection to this particular passage. Well, now you know about the blessings of God on Israel, that God has been living and walking among Israel, and that he would do so in an even more powerful way with the rise of the Bethlehemite. But it reminds us we too, like our ancestors, are to walk with God, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our. That's our role. And if I might phrase it this way, even a donkey knows that, as Balaam found out, and now we do as well. The walk with God that we've been talking about, that in part Israel experienced in the wilderness, as reflected in our parsha, is a walk that we get to participate in as well. And it's a walk that will end in a wonderful fashion, as the Elenu anticipates. It's the time of the kingdom of David's greater son, the Bethlehemite. But it's the time when the world will in fact be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. That response, as we rise yet again facing Jerusalem, is pages 102 to 107. It's the Elenu. And I ask that you rise, face Jerusalem, and join with Richard as he reads this in the Elenu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, la'ateit gedula l'yotzer bereshit, shelo hasenu k'lo ha'arad sod, ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu chechal ha'monam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. אמת מלכנו הפסו לטוב הכתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אינו. It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for he has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs. Our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like him, for he stretched forth the heavens like a tent and established the earth. Truly, there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. There is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed and all false gods shall be at an end. Then shall the world be perfect under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. The kingdom of David's greater son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled. The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. This is a time when we reflect on those who need our prayers, and we mention them by name to our God, asking that He intervene in their lives, and reminding ourselves as well that we need to be praying for them during the course of the upcoming days and weeks. By the way, if you're not part of the congregational prayer chain, do contact our care committee chair, Janice Nicolosi, to add your name to that prayer chain, and you'll get some of the information concerning some of these people during the course of the week. And if you'd like to have people prayed for specifically in our Shabbat services, please let us know by Thursday of that fact. These are the people whom we, in a real sense, present to God, asking that He act in their lives. First, there's Ben. Then there's Virginia and her family. There's Esther and Tommy. And then there's Chet. And so we, in a sense, place these into God's hands, into His care and keeping, as we said during the 6th blessing of the Amidah that we utilized this evening. Now, as a reminder that our God is a God who hears and who answers prayer, we now respond with one of the blessings of the daily Amidah, which serves as a reminder that we have a God who hears and who answers prayer. And we utilize the tune that Rabbi Dr. Stuart Dowman has been kind enough to permit us to use at this particular time. Shema Koleinu Eloheinu Chusvarakem Aleinu Tekabel Barakamim Tafilateinu Baruch Atah Shamei Tefilam. And the 16th benediction reads, "Hear our voice, Lord our God. Spare us and have mercy on us. Receive in mercy and favor our prayer, because you are a God who hears prayer and supplication. Blessed are you, O Lord. You're the one who hears our prayers, and for this we're grateful. And we're grateful to our God for all the blessings that He extends to us. And as we're ready to receive those blessings yet again, we rise, and Richard leads us in the receipt of those blessings.
Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing. Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, barachenu b'baracha hamashulat sheh. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. V'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and watch over you. May the Lord cause the light of His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you with favor, and may he grant you peace. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat